Welcome everybody. My name is Kubeir. This news media advisory from Mark Miller and the Minister of ESDC, and some interesting changes coming up. But overall, let's talk about the overall sentiment, right? My God, this is becoming quite negative. And one of the ways you identify that negative sentiment is nowadays through the social media platforms, right? And I'm sure most of you who are in Canada are already seeing it. It's there on YouTube videos, it's there on Twitter. Oh my God, Twitter is like everybody comes ready for a war, everybody comes ready to fight, everybody comes ready to call everybody names, throw insults, and of course, exhibit their displeasure with the rising immigration. They can express their displeasure with the rising number of temporary residents. They can express their displeasure on whether it's Indians. Like as of right now, I think Indians is getting are getting a lot of flack for being there in Canada in large number. Why Indians? You would ask. Well, you know what? We are the most populated country in the world. Duh. And English happens to be quite well spoken and widely spoken in India. Duh. And Indians also tend to be quite well educated. Duh. So if there is an opportunity that Indians find or think is something that they would want to get to in terms of a different country, a different place, get to a different place. And if all the check boxes, if all the boxes they can check education, age, work experience, language skills, and they can check those, well, then you would find large contingent of Indians in another country if they can check those boxes. So don't hold it against individuals. If you are such a big country and you can immigrate in such large numbers, well then check the policies of the country where if you are going to hold it against the Indians, instead check the policies which allows so many Indians. And look at the US, right? They have the quota. Well, I'm not saying to have the quotas at this point of time, because at this juncture it might go against the charter. There is a constitutional charter of rights and freedom in Canada, which cannot have a bias against one nationality. You cannot have any biases in this manner, which is widely known. So if Canada has to go in the direction of having nationality-wise quotas, it is possible. I know there are a lot of talks in the inner sanctum about these things, but if they have to go in that direction, then it's going to take some real changes at the grassroots. When I'm saying grassroots, I mean the constitutional level. Of course, it can happen, but at this point of time, it's not happening. So, what people need to do are to identify where things are going wrong. Well, I'll have to accept that as Indians, we haven't done ourselves a favor by getting ourselves a bad name, especially. I'm not going to talk about anywhere else, but let's talk about Canada itself. Protests for the sake of protest, just because you can protest and just you come out and protest when you don't really have something concrete, asking for rights which you think is an entitlement but actually is a privilege. You were granted a privileged status, but you think it's your right, and therefore when you don't get it, you like a small child throw your toys. Protesting for that sake, not good. Just by and large acting in a manner which is not considered Canadian, whether it's throwing trash. I mean, look at some of the collective places where a lot of Indians get together. We have our own community gatherings, social functions in large number. Look at the amount of trash we leave behind instead of carrying it with us. Again, not very Canadian. Things like the number of frauds, which I'm not saying others don't commit or not commit, but this is not about them versus us. It's about how many of them are then assigned to Indians. And therefore, it has become, over a period of time, collectively, we have got ourselves a real bad name. Some of it is well-deserved, I'll be very honest. Again, don't take it in a negative manner. I'm there on that side of the same boat. But at the same point of time, some of it is unwarranted, and we are getting it only because we are that large in number. But rising sentiment in Canada at this point of time, very negative against immigration. As I said, some of it is pretty well deserved, and some of it is absolutely, they have got it all wrong in the sense as to where should they direct their anger. It's not like international students or foreign workers just barged through the gates and came into the country. It's not like that, right? They were asked to come. And once they came, they were asked to stay. They kept getting extensions after another extensions. Initially, of course, because it was COVID and Canada needed the workforce, and they extended. And then they extended again. And then they called the international students and the foreign workers assets. And then eventually, when they were no longer needed, then they started calling them as cheap labor. And if they are paying for it, why not? And you would say, well, how can they say something of that sort? You know, internet is a very funny thing. Things what you say, once they're recorded, once they're up there, can bite you back. Take a listen to this one.
I mean, look, there's a lot of conversations with different competing policy priorities. You have industries in low-skilled labor, whether it's big box shops or others, looking for cheap labor and wanting to make sure that they maintain a 40-hour work week for some of the students. That's the competing policy with the labor gap that we face in this country, and we need those people working. And why not, if they're paying a whole heck of a lot of money to come to Canada to study more than a domestic student, why would we deny them that right? So some competing issues there.
Cheap labor wanted by big box stores, and international students are paying much more than domestic students. So why should we stop them from coming to Canada? Of course, right? I mean, it makes economic sense. And then there is this talk, two statements or two arguments that a lot of people on Twitter, on Instagram have been making or do make very regularly. And I would just like to address it for 1 minute. First one is that international students said it in their SOP that they will return back. Yes, because that is the requirement of the temporary residence application. And at the same point of time, Canada also accepts or acknowledges and entertains dual intent. What is dual intent? Dual intent is that you want to come and live in Canada permanently, but for this time, you're making a temporary residence application. That is dual intent. It is acknowledged, it is accepted, it's legal, it's there on the IRCC website. So when you come out and say that the international students have said it on their SOPs that they will return back, so now go back. Well, nobody, actually for a long time, people are not coming to Canada for education. That is something which is very well known and established. People are coming to Canada because for a long time, education or studying in Canada has been shown as a pathway to work in Canada and then permanent residence. Now, of course, so many people again then start showing fingers. You are an agent, you are a consultant, you are... Yeah, well, you know what? Agents and consultants have done it. I cannot take the blame away from that aspect as well. But where did it originate from? It has originated again at the grassroots level from the government. They wanted the international students to come, and international students, by and large, historically made for very good immigrants, right? Because the international students were already studying in Canada, so they understood the Canadian education. Then from there on, they were working in Canada, so that they understood the working culture. They were able to assimilate, and from there on, they became good permanent residents because they were able to, transition into the Canadian life. All right, everybody liked that. But what happened from there on was that, I'm not sure how many of you remember that infamous tweet from Justin Trudeau, where he said our doors are open for people who are running away from persecution. I think it was in January 2017, and the floodgates opened for refugees, right? And people started crossing the border from the US, and people started flying into Canada, and suddenly Canada was a go-to place for anybody who was seeking refuge. Similarly, over the period of time in 2018, 2019, 2020, as and how Canada started announcing the larger number of immigration targets, the multi-year immigration targets, the individual year immigration targets, where they said Canada needs 1.2 million people over a span of 3 years, and those made headlines. I'm sure you remember in Times of India and other newspapers. They made, you can even now Google 1.2 million workers needed in Canada. That's what the headlines said. So you went out and said it openly that you want more people. You also established the fact that we will give more priority if you have Canadian education. We will give you more priority if you have Canadian work experience. Now, who has Canadian education? International students. Who has the work experience? Largely the international students who have then transitioned to the temporary workers. So you are creating the pathways and saying that if you're an international student, we have pathways for you. Most of the provincial nominee programs also then have pathways which are directed to people who came to Canada as international students in their provinces and then workers. And then some of you will again come out and say, well, nowhere does it say we will give you PR. Of course it doesn't say we will give you PR, because that's not what how it is said. It is implied in some very clear words. And where is it implied? Again, I have it ready today. I came in all prepared because some of you really wanted to see it. Well, first of all, take a look at this one. Now, this is an image from Marco Mendicino when he was first announcing the postgraduate work permit extensions in 2021. That is when he was the immigration minister. But here he said, our message to international students and graduates is simple. We don't just want you to study here, we want you to stay here. Now, to all those intelligent individuals who are all trolling on internet all over the place as to where does it say that you will be getting a PR? What does it mean? We want you to stay here. We want you to stay here illegally? No, right? We want you to stay here legally. Means we are offering pathways to the permanent residents to all these graduates and students. That's the reason we want you to stay here. Otherwise, why offer them a pathway at all? That was one of them. Of course, if you are going to research a bit on internet, you can find plenty of other references made by other ministers, also in some places calling the international students assets, valuable assets, calling them that, indicating that these will be able to transition so nicely, will be able to transition quite well. And then there is this one. So this is the mandate letter from the Prime Minister to the Immigration Minister. This was Sean Fraser, because the Immigration Minister, because this is one term of that government, and that the mandate letters go out. And then again, it says expand. Expand means that the pathways already exist and you are going to expand. So one of the mandates that the immigration minister had from the Prime Minister was expand pathways to permanent for international students and temporary foreign workers through the express entry system. There you go. I mean, how much more do you want it to be written clearly? And of course, as I said, if you go out and start searching for excerpts where it has been said in so many ways and implied in so many ways, then you will find them in places that you can't even imagine. And it's all over the internet. It's not like I'm speaking out of some figment of imagination. So whether we say that it has been stated or it has been implied or whatever it is, right? Right now, the problem is in 2020, 2021, 2022, the floodgates opened as far as Canada was concerned. Loads of international students came into Canada. I will have to agree that the quality of students which came to Canada was really, really bad. I'm not generalizing it. I'm talking about a lot of people who came to Canada as international students was really, really bad. And then IRCC themselves reduced the language benchmark for STS stream. Why? Why would you do that, right? If you wanted quality people, if you're already having feedback from the colleges that a lot of international students who are coming, they cannot even communicate properly in English. How are they going to study? And in spite of that, in spite of having that feedback, you go out and you reduce the language benchmark. Why? Right? Interesting, isn't it? And then you wonder why haven't they ever curtailed specific programs? So right now, there are, or rather at some point of time, as per the media, found out through survey, more than 800,000 international students who completed business related programs, the global business management, the business related diplomas, which if you're a student, you know it very well that those are all trash. Those are all rubbish programs by and large, because the curriculum, they actually in the first semester or second semester or throughout the year, they're teaching you how to operate MS Excel. I'm an immigration consultant, and yes, I have vested interests. I am biased towards certain things, but at the same point of time, here, what I'm doing right now, this is not me being biased. This is me speaking from the heart. You don't like it, tough luck. You can scroll out, you can switch off, go watch something else. I'm sure Kardashians are doing a good job somewhere. So do all that. But at this point of time, this is a very simple debate. It's not an argument. It's laying out the facts. It's understanding what's gone wrong, and therefore direct your anger to where it needs to be directed at. Who brought all these international students who are now sitting in Canada and absolutely devastated because obviously high levels of mental stress, because every single week there are new changes. Whenever Mark Miller now says, I will be making an announcement tomorrow, people go bonkers in their head. They do not know what kind of new changes are going to come tomorrow, which will make it more difficult for them to now have a pathway. As I said earlier, Canadian education is not top-notch in any manners, except for a couple of universities, few universities. I can list them on one hand. Except for those universities, by and large, colleges and the education that you get there, absolutely down there. So therefore, so many aggregator platforms who have vested interest, so many. Why do colleges then give such high amount of commissions to recruit international students? You'll be surprised how much do the people get. Why is it that in India you have, especially in Punjab, you go there and you have so many IELTS coaching centers, SOP writers, and study abroad offices? I mean, you can go there and you can walk through streets, and every single office there is doing the same thing. Most of them are misleading individuals, misleading younger people into believing that the program that they're doing is so valuable that not only will they will get a class education, it will absolutely red carpet their way for permanent residence. Wrong information. But again, part of the blame goes to the international students, because you guys did not research well. You guys didn't even try to figure out what will work, what won't work, and yeah, that's not. You cannot always blame everything on others. Okay, and at the same point of time, who let the guys in? Who let all these 800,000 international students who are doing only global business management or business program or business diplomas in? Who continued to extend the work permits? Who then dropped the eligibility for the language? Who then also allowed spouses of all workers who are on open work permits, as in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them to come in? Who made it easier and easier? Who allowed visitors to be able to apply for work permits, which was then completely taken out of context? It was completely misinterpreted and then plastered across agents' offices across the world. Who did all that, right? So when you wanted the cheap labor, as you heard it from the horse's mouth, you were absolutely, welcoming, please come, please come. And now that the job is done, you want to throw everybody out. But then if you wanted to do this, fair enough. I mean, a lot of countries do it. Then say it like that, right? But only now, when the pressure is really, really rising, and you can make out from that, from all the current political party in Ottawa is really doing everything in which is possible to appease the political vote bank. And they're doing everything right now, bringing all kinds of restrictions, trying to sort of say out very clearly. Now, every Mark Miller's statement says, well, you have to understand that everybody who comes to Canada will not be able to stay in Canada permanently. Now they're saying it out loud. Earlier, it was always, if you're coming to Canada as a student, we would like you to stay here. So you see that contrast, you see that difference. But it's only now that they are saying it out loud. And when they're saying it out loud, they're also, between the political parties, between the ministers, they're all mudslinging. Nobody is addressing the solution or the problem. They're all just pointing fingers. And in the bargain, in this whole process, it's the Canadians who are feeling that it's the immigrants, or rather the newcomers or the international students, who are the enemy. That's not where it is. That's not where the problem is. You have to first find out, why did this happen? Why was it allowed to happen? And then direct your anger there and figure out solutions there, instead of being angry with the students. That's all I'm saying. I'm not biased towards students or otherwise. As I said, there is some really bad quality of international students that came through. I know a lot of international students are really, really going to suffer through the next couple of years. They will not have a pathway. A lot of them will have to go back. A lot of them are going to be extremely demotivated. A lot of them are going to be very discouraged. But that's the fact as of today. Not only today, let me also just sort of get back into the game and tell you that immigration, and I've been saying it for the last 2 years, not yesterday, not last month. Again, as an immigration consultant, imagine coming out and saying, hey guys, the PR is getting very difficult, think about something else, go and look for other options. Canada might not happen, because not only the negative sentiment, which exists quite strongly within the Canadian markets, within the Canadian people right now. And whenever everybody is shooting at the Indian students and the Indians, nobody talks about the number of refugees that have been allowed. And most of them who have no reason to claim refugees status at all. Nobody talks about them. Nobody talks about how many people who crossed the border through the Roxham Road from the US and came into Canada and are now costing the Canadian public $4,000 a month. Okay, just because they have claimed refugee status. The government pays for the children. The government pays for these people who have now claimed refuge. The government is paying for everything to the tune of $4,000 a month. They're also being given accommodation, food coupons, work permits, free healthcare, free childcare, of course, all of this. And yet, anger is directed towards the international students. Open your eyes. See how many people are making fake asylum claims. And the government, because it takes so much of time to make a decision on the refugee claimants, that individuals have now found this as an easy pathway to come and live off the government paycheck for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Hello, why not? I mean, government is paying, why not? Then why don't we talk about more than 1 million Ukrainians applied for temporary residence visas to come to Canada? Every time there is any kind of natural disaster or any kind of civil unrest anywhere in the world, Canada is at the forefront, which it should be. It has a heart, which is a good thing, which is absolutely something I love about Canada, that it is one of the very few countries which has a heart. But I mean, I don't have the number, but let's come to the real game. It has allowed all these collective policies, some of which were unchecked, some of which were not thought of, some of which were completely advocated by the lobbyists, have allowed at this point of time for Canadian population to be sitting with 3 million plus people who are temporary residents. Okay. Now, once you are in Canada as a temporary resident, majority, most of them don't want to go back, right? Most of them. And if most of them don't want to go back, what are you doing as the government? What is the CBSA doing? In most cases, you have refugees whose claims have been denied. They have been asked to leave Canada and they chose not to leave Canada. Kya kar loge? Nahi jate. We are sitting here. Do what you want to do, right? What are you doing about them? You know for a fact there are illegal individuals in Canada. To the last tune, there are more than between 500,000 to 1 million undocumented people, individuals in Canada. What are you doing about them, right? On the contrary, until some time back, Canada was considering to offer them a permanent residence pathway. Now, I'm sure there are some very genuine individuals who really had no other option. But is all 500,000 to 1 million, are all of them genuine individuals who really could not go back? Or they just chose to stay in Canada because it was easy? Who's asking? Nobody's throwing us out, so may as well just be here. So imagine 3 million temporary residents, up to 1 million undocumented individuals. You already have a conservative number of 4 million people. Canada's population is now 41 million. And we are bursting at the seams because the housing issues and the housing crisis and the inflation and the fraud and the mortgage. You have 4 million people who you are allowing to be here because the government absolutely did not check. It allowed it unchecked. And now you are crying because all of this is happening and political leaders are calling each other names. I mean, like children, like small children in a backyard. As an immigration consultant, I need to look after my interests first, right? That's what you will say. But this is also my interest. I live here. This is also my country. I want everything which is good for this country because I can see this progressing into something much, much, much better than what we have today. And it's very important that we have the right kind of people who will then take this country forward. But at the same point of time, what Canada is known for, as I said, is humane. The country has a heart, and you should never let that go. And at that point of time, you should first clean your house, get this mess sorted out, and then go out and start blaming individuals whose fault it is not to be here in the first place. Anyways, so, oh, wow, so much for my rant, right? I just went on and on and on. Thank you for joining in, everybody. I shall see you next time. Take care.